What's up, guys? We got a 10-minute game against Jose Lopez Molina, 1128. We're 1071. He opens up with e4. We play d6. He brings out the knight. We develop our knight and attack his pawn. He develops his knight, defends his pawn. We go g6 so that we can develop another minor piece. He develops his bishop towards the center, eyes the f7 pawn, and prepares castling. We just continue developing our bishop towards this long diagonal, and now we're ready to castle as well. White might castle, white might put a pawn in the center, but those would be good moves. Instead, he goes a3, maybe making some space for his bishop. Maybe he wants to pawn storm and, not pawn storm, expand and fianchetto. Not sure, but it wastes a little time. So now I'm going to use that time to develop a minor piece, and I'm going to make a pin on this knight. Now he castles, and now I'm going to castle. And now we've both pretty well developed. Our kings are pretty safe. So he puts the question to my bishop. I don't want to waste time retreating it, so I'm going to make the trade so that he has to spend a tempo recapturing. It does bring his queen into the closer to the center, but it's still kind of early, and my knight jumps can hit it, so it's probably not the best. But it's my move. I have one last minor piece to develop. I'm going to develop it to c6 towards the center. And now both my knights are on their natural squares, fianchetto bishop. My position's solid. White wasted some time with these pawn moves. White goes d3, solidifying his pawn and opening up the diagonal for his bishop. It would be a good move, except the dark squares are really open for my pieces, and so my knight can jump here and pick up the bishop pair. It could jump here and force the queen to go back home to defend. I'm going to go for the bishop pair though, because without that light squared bishop, white never has any type of pressure on my king side, because this is his good diagonal. So he moves his queen away from the attack, but that allows me to take his bishop, and it allows me to undouble his pawns and weaken his center. So now it's my move. Now, if you think about it, this knight doesn't have any prospects here, here. You can't really apply more pressure to this pawn, and it's defended so easily. So my knight doesn't have prospects, so I'm going to reroute it here so that it has two beautiful dark squares to go to. And it opens up my bishop's diagonal. So it's a slightly more harmonious setup, I feel like, but I could be wrong. He jumps his knight into the center. This puts a little pressure on my position, but the drawback is he's wasting another move. That knight's kind of blocking this diagonal, and he should probably develop his last minor piece. I can play c6, I can play e6, just to kick it and control that square. c6 looks very natural. It looks like a move you make in the Pierce a lot anyway, to control the square for the knight. If you play e6, it weakens the dark squares a lot since you already played g6. So c6 is preferable. It also opens up a diagonal for the queen, and the d6 pawn is still protected. So he moves the knight away from the attack. What is its threat? Nothing. Drawback? Well, I'm not sure what its future is. It also takes away the diagonal from the bishop. And now it was here, in a nice spot. Now it's here in a kind of weird spot, I feel like. Also, it walks into e5 if I want to go for that setup, since that's definitely a feasible pawn structure, right? Go for e5 and f5. I could go for that, and this kind of walks into it with tempo. I can also try to do like more of a dragon structure and go this way. Not really sure. I'm kind of liking the e5. He has to move his knight somewhere. F5. I don't really have pieces though. So like if he took, I would have to take with the rook. And he plays F4. Then I can take. Let's just try it. Now this weakens the D6 pawn a lot. So yeah, I probably should have gone the other way, but whatever. This is interesting. He moves the knight to a, I don't know how good it is. Also, it blocks any pressure on this pawn from a rook. Um, okay, so let's see what else. Kind of feel like we now have to do the F5 stuff, whether we want to or not. Just because now that we weaken the D pawn and are already pushed, blocked our bishop, we just kind of have to do a King's Indian style attack, even though the center is not closed in the same way, which makes it more dangerous maybe. So instead of taking, which is what I wasn't sure what would happen after, he develops his last minor piece, but this walks directly into F4. I mean, come on. You have to see F4. Also, this pawn was hanging with tempo, so there was that. But I'm going to go F4 and do the, G5, H5, G4, and just push, push. Well, actually in this position, because the queen's here as well, I don't even have to do this whole pawn storm like in the King's Indian. I can immediately push F6, F3, and he can't take with the queen because it hangs. And if he takes with the pawn, yes, it's a pawn sack, but I completely ruin the protection around his king. So this is a pawn sack that you want to keep in mind. It's an idea you definitely want to keep in mind. Just like, there's a pawn push e6, like in the caro-kann and other structures that you want to have in your arsenal. You want this in your arsenal because they take, and now his king is weak. His h3 pawn is undefended, and we can bring our queen in with tempo. We couldn't go here because of the bishop, but we have some ideas. It takes a little time, but how's he gonna get his stuff in the game, right? He can't transfer it. He'll have to sack a pawn back to try to get his queen somehow. I don't even know how white can organize it really. It's unorganizable. Is that a word? So we got 91. Okay, that's pretty defensive. That's an interesting resource. I like it. I like it. Um, I mean, we could take this pawn to start, just so his king never has king h2. Because if I waited a turn and do like, I don't know, knight over and his king goes here, then it might change things and make it a little harder. So let me take it first to open up both files. Now if I could just get a rook here. This is super funny idea with g5 in mind, going this way. But I said let's just bring the knight in, right? If I go this way, I still don't see how he stops this. Wait a second. Also, this pawn was hanging. So you probably should have taken that. And he could, in response, go... I don't really know. But I didn't do that. He moved the hanging pawn, opened up a diagonal, attacking my center. It undefends some light squares, so I'm going to immediately jump in and threaten checkmate in one. If he moves this pawn, that doesn't help. If he runs with his rook, I give a check. He moves his king, then it's checkmate. So to avoid checkmate, he can't. Yeah, he can't. I don't think. So that's that. That's one game down. Let's just give him the old checkaroonie. We gained some points. And now we have another game. with the white pieces. We're 1079 now. We're against Hamo Ashraf, who's 1056. We play 1c4. They do the typical and principled e5. We fee and kettle our bishop. We prepare to. He brings out his bishop, applying pressure to our dark squares. We're just going to continue with our plan. He's playing on the dark squares. We're playing on the light squares. He brings his queen out early. I'll move 3. What does this threaten? It threatens checkmate in 1. The drawback is it's completely absurd. I'm obviously not going to fall into that. I'm going to defend it. So you can block the square here. If he goes to kick you, you try to do something like d4, and he takes your knight, and you take the bishop, he take your bishop, so that doesn't work like it does in other e4, e5 openings. So you have to try to defend it a different way. I'm going to go knight h3, which defends it like this and prepares castling at the same time. You could have done something simple like a3. I think I did that in a different game, just blunting the bishop. But this prepares castling as well, and he can't take. If he could take, that would be horrible. You'd lose the game. But either way, even if he opens it up to try to take, I was going to castle and defend the threat this way. So I'm just going to castle and defend the threat this way. He might apply more pressure now with the knight, saying that he's clever. Look, I got a third attacker. But the drawback is it's still extremely easy to defend against. And I'm just going to go e3, blunt the bishop. Now it's not coordinating. There goes the attack. Now I'm ready to develop my knight and pick up that bishop. That's my plan. Also, e3, right? We were in this position. He moves his knight. He attacks. I defend with e3, but it secretly sneak attack. Boom. Sneak attacks the knight. So he develops a knight. He didn't see that this wasn't just a defensive move. It was offensive as well. So we can take the knight. We just have to make sure that we don't run into anything crazy after d5. No big deal. Free piece. Game over. Move 7. He did have 3 pieces applying pressure, but if you're going to do this type of thing from his side, you want this e-pawn to already have been on e4 so that this bishop's diagonal is always open and can't be blocked. Like in e4, e5 openings, that's why white goes bishop c4, because the pawn can't block, right? So if it can block, it kind of defeats the purpose. So anyway, he goes d5 as expected, trying to win my queen, but I see it. I'm just going to retreat 1 square and offer a queen trade since I'm up. Oh, I just blundered. Oh my god. He was going to take, I was going to take with the bishop, and then he was going to take my knight with the winning position. Wow. So anyway, I'm just going to take his queen before I blunder some more. He's going to take back. Now I'm still up a knight. This knight's trapped. That's something to keep in mind. I'm noticing it has no squares. I'm going to create a square for my knight right here. Also, if he takes, my knight can get out that way. So now my knight gets out of the jail, and it's on an awesome outpost, unassailable by enemy pawns. And now I'm going to probably take his knight. Yes, it's a nice strong bishop. Yes, it's an open board, but he'll have to take, or he would have had to take with the pawn, triple isolated pawns, plus isolated a pawn, double isolated. It's just the ugliest pawn structure you've ever seen. So he moves his knight to try to create this threat of winning my rook. Also, probably just the rook. But that's fine with me. I'm going to just develop my knight again to the edge of the board, stopping his threats because he keeps jumping his knight in. He now jumps his knight in this square, but because I'm up a piece, or whatever I'm up, I'm just going to trade, get his strong knight away. He does get this wedge pawn, which is kind of annoying, or he intermezzos this way and doubles my pawns, but I'm happy to trade pieces. It also opens up a square for my bishop with some more threats. Now my bishops are lasering, my rook's lasering. You can see how he has so many weaknesses. You can now see why isolated pawns are so bad. They're just targets. And he can't fianchetto because that hangs as the rook. He brings his king up, which is insane because it walks directly into a fork. Resigns. Ding. Wait for it. Ding. Really? So we take the rook. Now, do we get a ding? No. He's trying to find his best move in this position. His king's back home. Okay, so he brings his bishop out. I'm going to take it. Ding. Do I hear a ding? I do not hear a ding. Now he's going for my bishop. Let me just remove it with check. And now? Okay, he's going to play this one out. He's playing this out, fellas. So we're just going to bring our other rook in the game and maybe checkmate him since his king is in a weird spot, already cut off in a lot of ways. Okay. I'll take that pawn. Oh, tricked you. Ding. He thought I was going for the pawn. He thought I was going for the pawn. I tricked him, baited him, took his rook because I knew he would fall for it. Speed up the game. That's what you get for being a bad boy. Okay. What's the fastest checkmate? Maybe this? I want to create a mating net. So let's put this here. And if we put our rook here, then this should be checkmate. Yeah, that works. Okay. Do we get the ding? He has one move left, and he just will not do it. So we force the ding. A forced ding. You've heard of forced moves. That's a forced ding. I blundered a lot, but still a lot of fun. I always blunder when I'm making these videos, so it's a good time. Submit your rapid games. Let's analyze them. Goodbye.